Welcome to Shore Perspectives, a community feature of WESR Radio, highlighting the spirit of the shore from those who call it home.
My real name is Ellie Cackowski, and I live in Punketeek. I was born in Darmstadt, Germany in 1941, in the middle of the Second World War. My mother was Jewish, my father was Protestant, and I received the name Elfriede because it sounded very German. So my maiden name was Wigand. My grandparents, because they were Jewish from my mother's side, they were taken to Theresienstadt, which is today it's in the Czech Republic, and they perished there. My grandfather was about 10 years older than my grandmother, so he died in 43, she died in 44, and in 1945, my mother was arrested and ended up going to the same camp. The good thing is she survived, and when the war ended, I guess my parents at that point, there was nobody else left. And so, because we had relatives here, we had the opportunity to come here. My memories of Germany are very few. Good, thank goodness. I don't like loud noises because when the bombings occurred, that was a problem. One of the nicest things I remember after the war is an American soldier greeting my father and I and giving me a Hershey bar. So in 1946, we emigrated to the United States, and one of the first things that my aunt and uncle did was to take us to Broadway, actually further up in the city, and we walked past some stores, and my uncle said, "Would you like a banana?" I had no idea what a banana was. So I said, "No, I just wanted a piece of bread." He said, "Well, do you want something on it?" I said, "No, just a piece of bread." Food was scarce during the war, and even after the war, it was not as plentiful as we have here. So the idea of a piece of bread was just fine for me. I grew up in a very small town, probably about the size of an Hancock. So I walked to school. I was in a class with, I guess, maybe 30, 40 other children. I lived in a very rural area, although I lived in a town. And basically, I grew up very poor. I mean, we lived in a 3-room apartment that was above a grocery store. And I graduated from grammar school, went to high school. At that point, it was in Freehold, New Jersey. Ended up going to college, becoming a teacher of American history to 8th graders and going back to the same school district where I had graduated. My father was a very astute student of history. In fact, Germans are known for being very organized. Not that I'm that organized, but my father was. And he kept a lot of the important papers from our family. And I think, when I was teaching, I would share my experiences with my students. And I often said to them, I was meant to be your teacher and share my experiences. My father saved my mother's star that she would have to wear. Now, I did not have to wear a star because under a certain age, a child did not have to wear a star. So if my mother and I went out, which was not that often, she would have to have her star sewn on or pinned on a jacket. He saved a band that showed that she had been, today it's called Theresienstadt or Terezin. My original birth certificate has a swastika on it. In 1957, when I applied for citizenship here, even though I became a citizen when they did, my parents did, I had to have my own citizenship papers. My father sent to Germany. It came back, needless to say, without a swastika on it. My parents had different identification papers. My father's, it's like a regular passport, many pages. My mother's was almost like a piece of material, and you can see the threads on it, and on the front of it, it says Jude, Jew. When she came back from Terezin or Theresienstadt, she had script money with her. She had been a laundress there. And unfortunately, I never asked her as many questions as I could have. I guess maybe to save her some grief. And the only thing she ever mentioned was the fact not enough food, lice, and everything was dirty, because you had people confined to a small area, not enough where you could shower every day or wash appropriately, and everybody had something to do. Theresienstadt was used by the Nazis as a camp that supposedly was a model camp. When they brought in the Red Cross, they brought them to Theresienstadt and said, this is such a wonderful place. They had a band playing. They had flowers growing. Well, the minute the Red Cross left, it went back to where it was. And when my husband and I visited there in 2015, you could see where the ovens had been. There were mass graves. Just, it's hard to envision a life like that. I mean, luckily my mother was only there from February of 1945 until May, when the war ended and the camp was liberated by the Russians, not by the Americans. I have a cousin that lives in California, and her parents took care of me when my mother was away and my father worked for Merck & Company, the chemical firm. And she said to me, she said, you were a very quiet child. Well, for good reason. These people were harboring a Jewish child. Even though I was Protestant, the Nazis considered me to be Jewish. And so therefore, she said, I was very quiet. But I grew up here in America. I'm an American. And so my thoughts are of America. I'm an only child. And my father always said, a woman needs an education. She needs to be able to be independent for herself, whether she's married or not married. And so therefore, I had an opportunity to go to college. I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree. I enjoy teaching. I did it for 33 years. And it's just, it's, I guess, a thankfulness for being here. I don't know how else to explain it, except, I mean, Germany is a nice country, but there's nothing like America. Be thankful for what you have. I mean, I'm happy, I'm thankful to my parents that we came here. I've had wonderful opportunities. I like living on the shore. It's very much the way I grew up in New Jersey. Small town, good, bad, or indifferent, but it has been a wonderful life. And as I said, I live the American dream.
For Shore Perspectives and WESR Radio, I'm Kelly Gaskell.